Hey YouTube, Awesome Rider today. Today we're going to be talking about the Saban Brands era, and perhaps did we treat it too harshly in comparison to the Hasbro era. Now that we are in this weird place, I am recording this video early. I'm recording it at the beginning of the week to tentatively go up on the weekend, so between now and then, who knows? They could announce the reboot with a full cast and that they're bringing adaptions back, so just know that this video isn't a time capsule of the information that President Dawson knows. Future Dawson has nothing to do with this. So I wanted to think about where we're at in the Hasbro era, where we ultimately went, and looking back on the Saban era, the Neo-Saban era, which was very much criticized back in the day. You know, it tends to happen that way in most fandoms for eras, whether it's Pokemon, or Doctor Who, or Power Rangers. You know, that kind of cycle of new thing, bad. Whatever the new thing is the devil. It's the devil! And the last thing is suddenly great. And that can happen. That's happened with me too. And I think that I wanted to talk about some of the valid criticisms, maybe the way the older fandom was too harshly, and some similarities. Now to start, I do want to talk about the similarities, because when I was sitting there thinking about it, outside of one key thing, in a lot of ways the two eras were very similar in terms of their goals and setup. Both of them had ambition to have a reboot, whether it was the 2017 movie for Saban, or a streaming show, which was a movie at one point, but for Hasbro, a streaming show, which was the canceled one, and now the possible upcoming one. We'll believe it when we see it. But they had the ambition for that, and then they had the main show going, and then, you know, comics, toys, what have you. I think the key difference, or two key differences, is I think if and when Hasbro got the reboot off the ground, they did not ever want to go back to the old TV show. Whereas I think Saban, if they had succeeded with the 2017 movie or pressed on or tried again and maybe did their own reboot Netflix thing, I think they would have kept the main show going. I think that's a key difference. And also I think the key difference, and I want to be careful how I phrase this, is I think Saban cared more. I hate to use that phrasing because I hate this victim complex that fandoms have of they hate the brand, they don't care, because they're never going to care as much as fans. Like, it's great to have people passionate about stuff, but I'm not expecting everyone working on it to not see it as anything more than a job in a lot of ways. But by that I just mean that was really the only thing Saban had going. It was like their main drive in that department. I know Saban has his, you know, finger in different pots. Is that a phrase? But like I've seen some horror movies advertised when I'm at the movies and they're like Saban films. I'm like, oh, that's weird to see. But you know what I mean. In this department, that was their main focus. Whereas Hasbro has way bigger fish. They got freaking Star Wars, man. That's like insanely bigger than Power Rangers. So it wasn't their priority. So they, I think, cared more about making it happen. Whereas with Hasbro, really only at the beginning you had that one guy, who I can't remember his name, I'm sorry, that it was kind of like that episode where Rachel got the promotion and then the boss died before they could reveal she was promoted. Like, he died before that got to come to fruition. And like nobody else really had faith in the brand. Like, when we talk about not caring, I hate how the fans will paint it with a brush of like, the whole company's the devil, they're all out to get it. I'm sure there was people, whether it's working on the show or the toys, that cared about it and wanted to do a good job, but just in general, like the higher-ups, there wasn't anybody like at Saban that wanted to make this happen, and I think that's the key difference, is like, Saban, I think, cared more about making something happen because it was their only thing, and I think that they would have kept the main show going regardless of what happened. Now, the second thing I wanted to talk about was valid criticisms, because I think when it comes to this era, you know, a lot of fans, including myself, had criticisms that weren't necessarily not valid, but that were because we grew up with it in a certain way and expected a certain thing, and that's not, you know, also unique to this fandom. Whether it's a reboot or a new era in other fandoms, you know, you always get the older fans upset because of the rules and the lore and the source material and all that, and they're upset that this new thing isn't the old thing, and, you know, of course, that tired old attitude of, you ruined it. Like, you didn't ruin, like, when a reboot comes out, you didn't ruin the original. Like, people act like it reverberates through time and like erases it. Like, it's not what happens. But so that is a common attitude. Even in this fandom when it comes to Sentai, people like, you ruined Gokaiger with Super Mega Force. Nothing happened to Gokaiger. Gokaiger is fine. You can go watch it at any time. The point is, I think there was some criticisms that come from us being older, outgrowing certain things, and not having the fresh perspective of a new fan. But I think there was valid criticisms, at least in my opinion. Like, in general, when you think about it, the era included a lot of the hallmarks of the things that drew us older fans in, whether it was from the Disney era or, you know, somewhere in the Space Time Force era or the old MMPR era. It had a lot of those basics that obviously pulled a new generation in. Part of the thing that inspired me to do this video is seeing how many people grew up with Samurai, Megaforce, Dino Charge. They stumble upon one of my old videos or someone else's video or a tweet and like, Why are people hating on this so hard? Because it included most of the core tenets that drew us in, and we just have rose-colored glasses. You know, MMPR Season 1 was what got me into it, but that is a tough watch, guys. I cannot rewatch that for more than a couple episodes when I'm in a nostalgic mood. If I ever think about doing a full rewatch, it feels like a penance I have to pay. Like, I think that there's a lot of similarities in the weaker aspects of Power Rangers in early MMPR and the Neo Saban era, and arguably the Neo Saban era is better because they have more storytelling and stuff. So I think that it's just because we grew up with it in our heads, it's better. You know, you always see that notion of saying kids today don't grow up with the good TV shows. Like, they're going to be saying that about the next generation. There's always going to be new shows for kids to be nostalgic for. The point is that we have those criticisms because we're attached to a certain vision of it. But I think there was some valid criticisms to their delivery. I do think it's weird that they tried so hard to replicate that MMPR cheese. It was just very strange because you have these seasons that are trying to be a traditional adaptation of Shinkenger or Kyoryuger, but then you're also fitting in this weird MMPR formula and doing it weirdly. It just felt strange and like made everything feel more outdated. And even little stuff like having the morphing call being Go-Go, whatever the team is, like, if you're going to go for the nostalgia play, just make all the morphing calls it's Morphin Time. Would I prefer unique ones? Yeah. But Go-Go Megaforce, no. Just like, that's so weird. But it was a very strange approach. It was like they were trying to completely replicate the success like of MMPR by doing everything the same, and that just doesn't work. And then you do also have the 2-season thing, which is one of the most controversial aspects. And that's actually not something I have a problem with in concept. Like, compared to other fans, I feel a lot of fans were taken aback by that because of what we're used to and also the weird scheduling. And there's a lot of PR fans that it feels like when they encounter something like this or even a break like we're on now, it's like they don't watch anything else. It's like, you never watched anything else or followed any other franchises? Like, this has happened to other people before. The Ranger fans always take it so personally. I think the problem with the 2-season format was two things. One, the airing structure. Like, I don't mind the 2 seasons, but they did go on breaks at weird times. Like, now things have changed even more, where it's very much streaming focused. You still do have network TV with your 911s and your Chicago Fires or whatever the hell's going on. But streaming has kind of taken over in a lot of ways to a detriment, like with this 8-episode format. Like, I remember a joke in The Good Place about this show aired on the BBC for 10 years for like 4 episodes because we always used to make fun of like shows in England airing for smaller episode counts, and now we've become that. Back during the early Neo Saban era, Samurai, Megaforce, network TV still had more of a norm, and I think they would have been more successful if they aired it like a normal network TV show where you premiere in the fall, you know, you stop at Christmas after maybe a Christmas episode, you come back in February, and you air until about April, May, and then you go on hiatus for the summer. Our hiatus was in a weirder place. I think if we just structured it like normal 22-episode TV, that would have been fine because it would have flowed with everything else, and it's easier to follow. And also, I think the way they structure, I guess it's 3 problems, because I think that I don't mind the 2-episode or the 2-season format if they had structured it more like a regular season of TV where it truly felt like a season finale and you're coming back for a season 2 or a new era. Some of them kind of felt like that, like the lead-in from Megaforce was Super Megaforce, but if they had done that to structure it more like 2 seasons, I don't mind the 2-season format. I like the idea that new generations got to spend 2 seasons with these characters like we used to with MMPR, and I liked a little bit of a difference with that. I think the third problem, though, was the naming convention. Adding Super to every single one was dumb. I don't mind you coming up with a secondary title because I got why they did it, because when they came out with a new year of toys, they're going to sell more if it has new packaging and kids are like, oh, it's a new show, it's a new season, instead of it's just more toys for this year. So I get that, but don't make it Super every time. Do a different title like Ninja Blazing Steel, or have a secondary title like when Ben 10 did Ben 10 Galactic Monsters. Do like Dino Charge, Galactic Dinosaurs, I don't know. But do secondary title for the marketing, sure, but don't make it Super every time. I think even the kids probably noticed how dumb that was. And there's also, of course, problems with the weird restrictions they used. Like, the fact that they had these restrictions about, like, the morals and things you could and couldn't do, and, like, kissing. Like, I know we're trying to see the Rangers make out, but you know what I mean? It's so weird we found out about all these strange mandates that I don't know if they existed back in the MMPR days, but Power Rangers existed in a space that didn't have those rules for more years than not. So I think there was some valid criticisms about that way it was handled. And of course, that's to say nothing of the criticisms of the way Saban treats their actors, which there's very famous stories about that from back in the day. And then you found out that they didn't change all that much when you hear from some of the newer actors. Now, setting all that aside, you know, I definitely think they didn't have the best shows and whatnot. and it's a bit of road-colored glasses. Yeah, it all looks like road now, baby. Rose-colored glasses, but thinking about where we are now. And to be fair, we possibly have a reboot on the horizon, and Hasbro 2.0 could turn it around, or they could fail, and Hasbro 3.0 could turn it around, or someone else could buy it. And we're in a weird spot right now where people are like, the brand's dead. I'm like, technically speaking, we have a show on the horizon. Let's just wait. But we're not in a great place right now where we do have this possible reboot on the horizon. But in terms of where the franchise is, while we're waiting for this, all we have is an MMPR remastering, technically the second time we've done that to a degree, MMPR toy line based off of that, and a controversial web series that's all MMPR focused. But in Saban era, you know, when we were waiting for the 2017 movie, when we didn't have it, afterwards, when maybe if Saban had kept it, we would have been waiting for them to try again, they kept the main show going. And, you know, it's kind of it's better than nothing thing, but, you know, at least you had a version of the show that would bring new audiences in, the new generations, that wasn't MMPR. It was a show that could be enjoyed by the older fans that can find things to enjoy in the shows that maybe weren't quite as good as the older ones, but still find nuggets in there that, you know, enjoy collecting the toys. It was always nice to be able to get more affordable toys, to get action figures of the Sentai they were using, since we've started to do it quasi recently, but it's not full teams a lot of the time. So there was still stuff there. So I think, like, in terms of just the status quo, we were definitely in a better place with the Saban era, even at its lowest, because of course you have the 2017 to look forward to. It's still one of my favorite PR stories. I think it's unfortunate they didn't try again or try to make something happen. They try to make Fetch happen. But, you know, in the meantime, you had that main show, you had that kind of steady status quo. You know, there was things to enjoy in those shows. Like I said, it brought in new fans, and you had the collectibles. But also, looking back on this, you know, it was so easy to rag on Saban because of how poor the show was. And I think, like, again, I think that was valid seeing and frustrating for the fans because we had seen it mature. And it's not like Power Rangers is going to mature from where it starts till eventually it's Game of Thrones and there's titties out. But it matured to this level where it could be enjoyed by a wider age group. And I just want to take a small side tangent to say I still never understood why they were only interested in the very young audience. Like, nothing wrong with that. Like, you can have your core audience wanting to be this younger age group, but, like, what is the harm in making it so that it can be enjoyed by, like, up to ages 11, 12, and obviously that's older fans. But you know what I mean? Like, there are many brands, including stuff like superhero movies, that are very much enjoyed by adults, even have things that are going to go way over kids' heads, but they know there's going to be a 5-year-old in the theater. So it's like, I never understood why you didn't want it to be sustainable, and I think that was another issue they had. But thinking back on that era, like, my final point really before I wrap things up is, you know, I was so focused on how disappointed I was that the show devolved itself that I really didn't think about, especially now when we're in the Hasbro era where all we're getting is MMPR rehash stuff and relatively minor things now. And not that they didn't do stuff. You know, I think Hasbro had a good renaissance time when we got the Lightning Collection and there was a lot more cool stuff happening. But in general, I was thinking about how many cool things Saban did because I think they cared more about making it happen in other places. We got the comic started there, which I think was a great thing. I think things like the 2017 movie, you know, scratched the itch of the older fans that wanted to see something different and more mature, but the comics did as well. Like, sure, it was only MMPR, but you got to do it. But they expanded into other seasons and they expanded the MMPR lore, and it was getting to see that world taken advantage of in a way like never before. You know, there was a brief period of time where it went quasi-mainstream with the comic audience when Shattered Grid happened. You know, I think they were the ones that started, like, with the Legacy Wars games. I can never remember which one's the mobile game, which one's the console game, but they got that started. Doing stuff like Hyperforce. Like, there was lots of really cool things that got off the ground. Like, they had, you know, ambition to make things happen and have PR pop up in different places. And, you know, obviously it's coming up very much from classic Saban. Like, I am Saban, I want to make money, but there was definitely a lot more irons in the fire back in the day when it came to that. Like, to sum up, it's kind of funny to think about. In a lot of ways, you know, that even if the show wasn't so great, they were in such a better place in terms of what ideally I would like to see for the franchise. Like, for me personally, just on a personal level, if we don't go back to adaptions ever and we do reboots that are successful, I'm fine with that. But I think ideally for the fandom, I'd like to see a world where we can get a reboot show or movie that's something new, expands the audience, but then keep a version of the main show going for the younger generation that might get into it, for the hardcore audience, and then also have other projects like comics, video games, Hyperforce and stuff. And it's funny how, for a hot minute there, we were kind of in the ideal situation on paper. Like, maybe not in terms of quality, but we had a reboot on the way, you had the status quo show for the kids and for the adult fans that wanted to keep that. And that's kind of funny to think about. It's unfortunate it didn't work out. I'd be curious to see a world where Saban would have tried again. I think there's a world where they could have tried to maybe make this blow up on streaming and then really just go hard in on the fact that the second movie was going to have Tommy in it. Release it at a better time, because I think that was a factor. But yeah, I think there was a lot more good in the Neo-Saban era than we give it credit for. Far from masterpiece, mind you. I think they did many things that were detrimental. I think that, you know, regressing it back to that MMPR level of writing was unfortunate, because a lot of people that might have watched the movie or thought about Power Rangers and looked like, oh, it's still airing, and thought, oh, it's the same stuff. And it's like they missed that window where it was better. But I think, you know, we took for granted a lot of the stuff they did for us that we're benefiting from now. But it's certainly a better place than we are at this moment, but I'll be curious to see where Hasbro 2.0 goes, or whatever the next era is. But what do you guys think? What are some things that you in retrospect appreciate about the Neo-Saban era? Till next time, Dawson Ryder, signing out.